Okay, ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
I'll call this work session to order. It's a work session of the Seward City Council, 5:30 on June 10th, 2024. And the topic is the Seward electric system. And I'm going to turn it right over to administration to tell us what's coming up.
Okay. Yeah, we have Brian Hickey here this evening, and so we're appreciative of him. Now that he's kind of up to speed a little bit more, and as much as anyone can be with the time he's been here, but just to give you an update on where we're at with the infrastructure project and kind of the financial picture and that kind of thing. So I'll just hand it over to Brian then.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and I'm not sure. I think everybody can hear me.
Yeah, I never know if it's on from
It
this
looks like I see
perspective,
light
so-
up there, so that
Okay.
must be a
Okay.
good sign. That's a good sign.
And we have a PowerPoint?
We have a PowerPoint.
And we have, just for the
Yeah.
audience,
Oh,
we
good.
have
You guys have a
copy.
copy of it?
So if we're not looking up there, we've got it.
I'll look up there because I didn't bring a copy for myself. So what Kat asked me to do and Jason was to sort of take a look at the infrastructure project, where we are on it. Obviously, when I got here, I was a little like, wow, there's a lot of people working. Where are we at financially? You know, the meter's running. Let's run this to ground and figure out what's going on. You all probably may have or probably have more background on the project than I do. I've really been able to review some files and things like that, and I spoke to Rob Montgomery about it just to kind of get his take on it. So what I wanted to walk through is sort of what were the underlying or overarching objectives of the project originally. What is the scope of each section of the project? I've put together a project schedule, just to kind of high-level Gantt chart. I do have a more detailed Gantt chart that rolls up to the one that's in the PowerPoint, so if people wanted to get into the details, we could. I took a look at the, thanks. The budget versus actual, and then where we at as cost to date. And so if you all have questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer them. And if there's things I don't know, I'll run to the ground and get back to you with the answers. I think the primary objectives were, first and foremost, there were some safety issues, particularly around the ground grids and the substations. And that actually, I've been aware of that for many years, back when John Fouts was here and Jack Anderson. The IEEE Standard 80 came out in mid-2000s or early 2000s, which significantly upgraded the requirements for ground grids and substations. And most utilities have had to go in and replace the ground grids. The ground grids are a safety issue because, I won't get into the details, but if you happen to be in a substation and you're stepping or touching something at a time a short circuit occurs, it creates a voltage which can have actually electrocute someone. And so all the substations and the power plant's ground grid, I believe, was in pretty good shape, but required some additions. Lawing and Spring Creek require an additional ground grid replacement of ground grids. There were, from a line perspective, there were compromised structures, particularly along Nash Road, what we call Nash Road Phase 1, which was from Sawmill Creek out to the SMIC out there. And then with the more modern technology, the protective equipment, which are what we call relays, the ones that were in place were original solid-state relays or electromechanicals, which they just aren't even used. It's hard to find people who can work on those anymore. They just haven't been around for a long time. So the protective equipment had to be replaced. That will improve what we call selectivity, so that we'll be able to identify faults more clearly as to their location and open them without taking out customers that don't need to be taken out. It also, because of the nature of microprocessor relays that sort of came into being in the 2000s, you can bring a lot more information back. Obviously, that will require some processing and some work on the back end to actually use that information, but it does improve the operator's situational awareness of what's actually going on. And the other topic, or the other key component to this, was moving from 69,000 volt or 69 kV to 115,000 volt or 115 kV. 69 kV is not a voltage that's actually used very often anymore. In fact, the only 69 kV remaining in the rail belt is here at Seward and the line between Cooper Lake Hydroelectric Plant and Quartz Creek. All the other 69 kV has been converted to 115. 115 has a greater transfer capability, but there's also a lot more interchangeability with it. It's just an older voltage that's sort of from the 40s and 50s and early 60s, and it just isn't used very much anymore. So the intent was to convert from 69 to 115. That involves replacing some transformers. The transformers were all very old, and certainly at the end of their useful life economically. Old transformers, they will fail eventually. They're because of just the nature of they have paper with oil, and as you use them, the paper dries out, and eventually that arcs inside, and the transformers fail. So that required replacing the transformation at Fort Raymond, Lawing, and over at Spring Creek. And finally, it does provide significant increase in transfer capability. So as Seward's load grows, you're prepared to go significantly higher than you are today. So those were, I think, the overarching objectives of it. And so if I kind of break it down into, there's 4 or 5 projects, the way I kind of broke it down. You have what they call Nash Road Phase 1, which went from Sawmill Creek out to Smith. Nash Road Phase 2, which went back to, from Sawmill Creek back to the highway. There also in Phase 1 was included a small section of 69 to 115 conversion that was right near Fort Raymond there. That was included in Phase 1. And then reconductoring the distribution underbill that runs along Nash Road. There's a section of it that needs to be upgraded to what's called 336 KCM. That's the diameter, the circumference diameter of the wire. And I can't remember, I think that might be 1/0, which is a much smaller wire than 336. What that will allow you to do is backfeed through, you'll actually be able to backfeed Seward out to the Spring Creek substation, back along the distribution, and back into Seward proper on this side. That provides some flexibility, and certainly we will need it when we actually do the conversion from 69 to 115. Because if you think about it, what has to happen is, before you can actually change the voltage, all the substation transformers have to be in place, and you have to take, as you put those transformers in, there would be lengthy outages unless you were able to backfeed through other circuits. So reconductoring that distribution, first of all, it gives added capacity out there, and it gives what I call a redundant path to the Marine Industrial Center out on that side. So it makes good sense. And there is an air brake switch on Nash Road and the Seward Highway. And when we get to the financials, you'll see there's a little bit of a complication. That was included in Phase 1, and the switch was bought under Phase 1, but it actually won't be installed until Phase 2. So when you see my financials there will be a little bit of Phase 1 money that's going to have to be spent in Phase 2. It won't materially change the outcome, but it's just something to realize. So that's the Nash Road. At Fort Raymond, a transformer was added so that you had redundant transformation there. That was primarily for shore power and for the potential for future shore power. And 2 breakers were added there so that you could actually add feeders from Fort Raymond down into the shore power area. Now that plan has changed a little bit, and some of those assets we may reallocate to what I'd say what the railroad's preferred design is, which is an actual substation down in the port area with the 115 tap into there. So, but that remains to be seen. We haven't worked out all those details yet. But at Fort Raymond, we're going to upgrade the ground grid, put in the improved protection devices. I spoke a little bit about that earlier. The power transformers are now larger and can carry both shore power and the city of Seward proper, as well as the industrial complex on the far side. The feeder breakers, all of the feeder breakers were upgraded. Those were old Kyle, what we call Kyle reclosers, which are, they interrupt the circuit, the current when there's a short circuit, and they were old and needed to be replaced. Those things actually do fail catastrophically because of a seed fault current, which is usually many times higher than the actual load current. And finally, Once again, with the relaying, you get improved operational awareness or situational awareness for the operators, so they can respond to outages and dispatch crews more quickly. Now, I have to say on that side that the information is there now. What's not in this project yet is the software on the back end that allows people to actually see that. And I'm not sure, it may be I'm still kind of working through the contracts and reading them and trying to understand what was agreed to, but it looks to me like there's going to have to be some work on the back end if you want to provide that situational awareness to the operators. But we're not talking about big money, nothing in the range of what the actual infrastructure costs. Lawing substation conversion. So right now at Lawing, we come in 115 from Dave's Creek, and then we drop to 69, and there's that transformer. I mean, for my entire 40-year career, that transformer has been a problem. A little 2.5 MVA one there, which would never phase to this. You couldn't connect it to the circuit going to Cooper Landing, and it was replaced a couple times. It was one of those things you're just like. Anyway, but anyway, that transformer is going away, and we're taking the Lawing transformer out, and we'll move that over to Spring Creek, and so you'll have those are twin transformers, and it's important if you connect transformers in parallel that they actually have been built and designed at the same time at the same manufacturer, so you don't have circulating currents which cause problems. So that transformer is a twin to the one that's at Spring Creek, so it will be relocated to the Spring Creek substation. And then we'll put a 3-way remotely operated switch at Lawing to serve both the Primrose load, which is Seward load, and in the event that we're backfeeding Cooper Landing, up Moose Pass, when we're helping Chugach out or vice versa. That's a point where the distribution systems between Seward and Chugach meet is at Lawing. And we'll replace the ground grid. We have to put a small control building in there and a battery bank so that we have something so we can remotely operate the actual 3-way switch there. So that's sort of the story at Lawing. Spring Creek, once again, we're going to upgrade the ground grid. I know that some work has been done. As you can see, there's 2 fences there. Last year, they constructed the pad. The pad needs to be larger so that we put the 2 transformers in. So that pad will be actually increased in size, or it has been increased in size, and the fence has been constructed. The ground grid will get installed. The transformer that's there now has to be picked up and turned so that the 115 bushings line up with the A-frame, and then another pad will be constructed, and this Lawing substation transformer will be put in there with another circuit switcher. And that's sort of the story at Spring Creek. Scope on cruise ship shore power, I'm sure you all are aware that we did apply for a grant from the federal government on the 28th of May to actually bring the shore power down. Alaska Railroad and the Seward Company preferred to have a substation located down near cruise power, near the actual cruise ship dock. So I put together an estimate, we submitted that, and we should know here, I think, late summer, early fall, as to whether we're successful with that grant. But this would be primarily grant funded. And so where you see, it does have a 10% match requirement. And so where you see the, in the table on the financials, I've added Seward's costs at the 10% that we would be required to contribute to the overall grant fund. So that's the number that you see in there for the estimate. So that's the cruise ship power. So where are we on all this stuff? Nash Road Phase 1 is substantially complete. I have, on all of these, I ran it out to the end of the year because there is some as-builting work. It's inconsequential from a cost perspective, but the as-builts need to be completed. And so we'll have to go through and do that, work with electric power systems to do that, EPS. Nass Road Phase 2 is scheduled to begin this summer with material acquisition. There are some poles we need to buy that need to be upgraded, and we were looking at trying to complete it in September. Let me preface all this by saying I met with Sully and we kind of walked through where we are financially on this. So the schedule, I actually put the schedule together before I met with her about the finances. So she and I are going to put together a cash flow that kind of walks through what can we afford to do and in what time frame. If you recall, I believe the bond wasn't, this is, so I've heard this hearsay, so you all may know more about this than I do, but I can't, the overall cost of the project is right around $20 million. And I think he bonded for about 10, and we're going to use the electrical fund for the remainder. I think we've exhausted or close to exhausting what was in the electrical fund. I think we're about 12 million right now. And between the $10 million bond, of which I think you had $9 billion was actually usable cash, getting the bonding, the cost of establishing the bond. We're going to come up at a point where we're either going to have to go out for another bond, or we're going to have to slow the projects down and think about that. But we will put we'll put a plan together and bring it to you all and to finish the project. So what I've got on the schedule is what we could do if we had funding, I guess. So I think I should make that clear. But Nash Road Phase 2, we would try to get done this summer. It's critical to do that because we can't do the 115 cutover until we have that back feed of the underbill through there. And we actually can't convert it to 115 until we've re-insulated for that. Lawing substation, the thinking is that the transformer has been acquired and will be here next month. Now, one thing that on some of these, even though the project hasn't started, some of the long lead time items were purchased and are here, like the power transformers. The lawing substation transformer will be here, I think, next week. And so we'll temporarily set it on a temporary foundation up at the Fort Raymond until we can get the rest of the equipment. The switch has been ordered, and I don't recall the actual date, the three-way switch for lawing. But ideally, we'd start lawing this fall and try to finish it up next year. And then we begin design on Spring Hill, finish the design on lawing and begin the design on Spring Hill this summer, finishing both of them up next year. And then the shore power, depending on the grant, whether we get the grant or not, that actually needs to be done by the end of 2028. That's a requirement of the EPA Clean Ports Grant. That does mean that we have to have the 115 conversion done so that we can actually put the substation in. So there is some sequencing that has to be done to make all this happen. So that's sort of what I see the project schedule. I've had a couple meetings with EPS. I think probably Lawing and Spring Creek will slip because I don't think they have the design the capacity to actually get the design started in the time I'd like to get it started. So that may work in our favor from a financial perspective, as maybe we slip those out a little bit. Fort Raymond, we believe Fort Raymond will be complete somewhere between August 1st and August 15th. EPS believes that'll happen. I went through their estimates for the work that they have remaining. I think they're legit. I mean, I think they could probably be done late July, but we'll call it mid-August, because it'll probably be early September, just the way projects run.
You're talking 2025?
2024.
Oh.
We'll be done this summer at Fort Raymond. All the equipment's been
Okay,
acquired.
I was just looking at your...
Yep, everything is, did I put 2025 up?
Yeah.
You did?
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Oh, well, yeah, I that's the as-builting, and that should be 12/31/2024.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be 2024 there. The as-builting, the actual work, though, that costs money, should be done in August.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it'll be good to get that back together. And that's really the big, as you'll see when we go through the financials, that's the big chunk of the money. So I apologize with the error. So that's sort of how I see this all playing out over the next few years. We are going to have to, we'll come back with a financing plan, and we'll figure out the design on the two substations with the back end, with the back end constraint that we really do need to get the 115 cut over if we're successful with the grant, and we're going to put the shore power in. And we got to have enough time to get all that done, the material ordered and all that stuff. So where are we at financially on it? Nash Road Phase 1 actually looks pretty good. You know, the budget was about 4.5 million. Our actual costs are about 4.1, which is a positive 428,000. What I would say about that is there's probably 50,000 of that is going to be spent putting that three-way switch in, which is in the estimate for phase one, but actually is going to be installed in phase two. The material was acquired in phase one, but the work will be done in phase two. So that one looks pretty good, and it's done other than as-builting. Phase two, the cost is going to be higher than the 1.2 million. There were, I don't know, there's maybe a dozen poles that they did not believe needed to be replaced in the original estimate, but those are going to have to be upgraded from a size perspective. They haven't been purchased yet, and we're still kind of negotiating with EPS or working with them to understand why they have to go up, why they have to be sized up. And I just want to make sure it's, I'm not going to say it's not legitimate, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to the increase in that estimate. So that's number's going to move around a little bit. Like I said, Fort Raymond was estimated about 7.1 million. We've committed 6.4. We've spent about 5.1 plus the 123,000. When I say internal costs on this table, those are the costs of our folks who've been working and charging time for the project. We're probably going to come in pretty good shape on Fort Raymond, it looks like, at the end of the day. As you know, EPS has, I think, or EPC, Electric Power Construction, has maybe 5 or 6 folks up there, and they'll be working 7/10. So we're going to spend some money, but we're still well under the 7.1 million, and we're under actually the 6.4 million committed. So I think we're going to come out pretty well, come out in pretty good shape on Fort Raymond. Obviously, that remains to be seen. As far as I can tell, all the material is here. We did just find there's one of the circuit switchers is damaged. We just found that yesterday, so we'll have to do something about that. I got it, but that's another issue. Just a detail. Lawing. It's at 2.2 million. We have 1.4 committed. Really, the big cost there, the biggest cost is the transformer, and that has already been procured. There are some issues with the design's going to have to be modified. We had the lot surveyed. I don't believe it was quite what we thought it was. I believe there have been 3 companies surveyed it because it wasn't coming out the way the guy whose building is right there said it was, and the final people said this is the problem with the survey. So there's going to have to be some minor modifications to the design because the lot isn't what we actually thought it was. So that's that, and I don't have the details on that. I just know that that's sort of was ongoing, trying to get to the bottom of it. But we do have a design that what do they call it? Ticks and tacks. Close the loop on the design or on the survey. So Spring Creek, it's going to be 3.9 million. Obviously, the second transformer there is one that we are bringing from Lawing. The 2 circuit switchers have not been ordered yet, so those will have to be ordered. There's foundation work. There's quite a bit of work to be done over there, and like I said, that'll be kind of pushed out a ways. And then the shore power, to do what Seward Company and the railroad would like is about a $14 million project. Our share would be about 1.4 million, and the feds would pick up the remainder. There are some things that we may be able to do to bring that number down, because I think some of the equipment that we installed at Fort Raymond could be moved to this new substation, and we'll see where that goes. That remains to be seen at this point in time. But all in, we're our actual costs are about 12.9 million, 13 million. The total cost of all the projects was about 20. Our committed cost for the work that's done right now is about 13 million, so we're about $1 million under our committed cost. So I really think I'm not as concerned. When I first came, I was like, wow, where is it? Where is all? There's a lot of people working, money's being spent, but I think we're in pretty good shape. So I feel pretty good, unless there's something that I haven't, some stone that I haven't uncovered yet. So that's really the summary on it. I can give you any detail that I have, and if you have other questions, I can certainly, run them to ground. If there's anything else you need, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can, or run to ground any questions that you have otherwise.
That was really informative. Questions?
Drinking from a fire hose.
I'm sorry, there's a lot
I
of,
have so many questions.
My questions all tend to be more financial than structural, though.
Go ahead.
That's, well, I don't know, do we know where we're at in our electric fund? Do we know what our available cash?
so I met with Sully on Friday. We will come back to you with that information. I know she knows, but I don't know, and she's not here tonight. But she and I need to sit down, and I need to kind of understand it a little better about what MRF, I think they call it, the MRF, and so I know it was in the rate study. I did read that when I first started, and the funding for it was in the rate study. Now what's happening, so Sully and I need to sit down and do that. We will put together a detailed financial plan and bring it back to you and say, hey, this is where we are, this is where we need to be. How do you all want to get there?
Yeah, because that's really going to drive a lot of any of the decisions that we can make down the road. I mean, it looks like the first couple, phases and the Fort Raymond stuff is probably financially mostly taken care of with the bond and other funds in the electric fund. It's just the stuff beyond that, but we always knew that. I think when we cut the bond from 20 to 10 million, we knew that the later phases were going to be something we would have to deal with financially, and hopefully, from my standpoint, without bonding anything else. So I guess we'll just have to.
Yeah, and we can put that together for you. I just don't have that information right now. I just couldn't pull it together.
We're going to have to have.
Yep. Other questions? I'm sure you have some.
I'm going to pull still trying to get my head around, because that's a lot of numbers and stuff going on here, and a lot of different, okay, I'll start with this. Committed, we were at 13 or so, but you're saying we're going to spend 20. Is that saying that we have 7 more million projected cost to finish up? That would be just Spring Creek line, and that doesn't.
Nash Road Phase 2.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you've got about 7 million more to get to the 20 million, and the estimate. I went through the estimate. It's a good estimate. I mean, it's rough order of magnitude. We're not going to be significantly off from that one way or another. It looks like we may come in a little bit under, but it's a long way to the finish line. A lot can happen between now and then, so I shouldn't even have said that, actually.
So when you're saying the 115, that we have to get that done in order to get shore power, and the shore power has to get in by 28, you call it the 115 cutover. Can you just explain that a little more?
Yeah, sure. So right now, the voltage the power is transmitted to Seward at 69,000 volts, and it changes at Lawing substation. Yeah. We've put in what they call dual voltage transformers at Fort Raymond, so in order to put a 115 circuit down the AK Alaska Railroad right-of-way and not put a 69 kV transformer or a dual voltage transformer there, we have to be at 115 when we put that substation.
At Lawing.
Right, or we're going to have to go ahead and take it out and put another one in when we do go to 115, which just wouldn't make any sense, right?
And we haven't purchased that 115 yet?
No, we haven't done anything on that. That's really contingent on the grant. Right now, the Clean Ports Initiative grant.
And what's 115, what's the ballpark figure for that? Because we just bought it.
Yeah, you're probably $3 million, 2 to 3 million would be my guess. It's right now things are just crazy in that market. So we go out and we get a bid, and someone says they'll build it for us, then we'll know what it's going to cost. But right now, because of a lot of problems with the steel that is used in cores of transformers, unfortunately, significant quantities of it are made in Ukraine. And so that's really thrown a wrench into the whole global power transformer market. So anyway, but we will go out for that, but that's kind of the order of magnitude number here. It's a multi-million to $2 or $3 million transformer at the end of the day.
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah. So to to the batteries at the shore power. I've had a couple of questions about that from different people. I get the premise there. I'm wondering if you're saying it's 2 hour, I assume that's I don't know how many megawatts that is.
Well, it's 12, my understanding is that they're looking at 12 megawatts of 2 hour batteries. It's a Tesla Megapack. That's sort of what Tesla sells. So what they put at home, if you want to buy a Tesla battery, you get 2 hours, you can get 4 hours, but you can't get 30 minutes or, it comes in basically, it looks like on the back of a 40-foot van. That's what they have down at Homer. They've got those and they put in I think 47 megawatts of them up at Chew Gas. So a Tesla megawatt is a Megapack is 1 megawatt for 2 hours. Now, when both of the two large ships are in, when you look at the size of the ships, there are two ships, and I can't remember the names of them. They're Oasis of something. Those two are, I want to say 11 megawatts each. They're bigger. Most of the ships are 5 to 6 megawatts, but those are bigger, and they're 11 megawatts. So what they're proposing is something that would cover most of the large ships and all of the small ships, so that if the power goes out, the ship doesn't lose power, and when they first connect it, the battery will soften the blow essentially to the grid here, because that's a big, even if they ramp it up, a little bit at a time to the degree they can within the ship, that's a pretty sizable load to put on the system. So during the cruise season, you'd have those batteries being used for the ships. Yeah.
And then off season, would we be able to use that, say, in an avalanche for, well, maybe even more than 2 hours, because we probably don't draw that much in the winter.
Yep, absolutely.
And would that also improve our efficiency of our grid, just like the one at Homer?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things. None of it's been studied, but I would say off the top of my head, when I first heard it, I thought, well, there's a couple things. One, potentially you would be able to, you could sell fast reg or spin into the grid, because you've got these batteries sitting here during those 9 months when they're not being used for the cruise ships. So there's a potential that if that need is out there, there are ramifications around that. We have to look at how that works with the fact that you're not economically regulated. There's a lot of things that would have to be run to ground for that, but there's that. In addition, you could use them for peak shaving, which would cut your demand charge down. So I think they have value, but we have to get the historical data on how your peak looks. I don't know that. But once we pull that historical,
that flattens those peaks out, right?
You just cut them off, yeah. Assuming they're not too long, right? If it's peaking 6 hours every day, this really doesn't do much for you. You might be able to take a little bit off the top. But overall, that would reduce your demand charge, which is a pretty significant portion of the bill if you've looked at the bill.
So on just to dig down just a little bit more on that shore power, and I know we're not there yet, but we are applying for that. Because of the problem in the railboat with a lack of certainty of where we're going to get our gas, is that going to be a liability for us as we negotiate price from Chugach or wherever we buy our gas or our power from?
I'm sorry, is what a liability?
Because we're running more power in Seward, and if there was a gas shortage, we might be looked at as a liability because we're drawing more power.
That certainly is a perspective you take, but the railroad is going to have to find a replacement for cooking natural gas. And really the amount that Seward draws out of that,
it's nothing.
It's significant, but it's not material in the sense that it would change the contracts and stuff. So I think everybody has the gas problem, and we're going to solve that problem. The railroad utilities are going to solve that problem, and NSTAR somehow.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really puts us in a situation like that. Plus you have, from an advantageous perspective, we have 15 megawatts of diesel-fired generation, which doesn't run off natural gas. It's expensive, but if it's the alternative is that or nothing.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that's really, that doesn't concern me too much.
Okay. And then, last question. I think my last question. This project, one critique that some of the public has had about it is that we could have waited to get grants or federal or infrastructure money for some of this. Is that a reasonable argument, or are we in a position where we kind of had to get this done since we were pulling it apart at that time? We had to really get those in there anyways. In other words, could we have waited for a few years to get some infrastructure money? Would that have been a plausible strategy?
I haven't given it a lot of thought. From what I know, there are a lot of programs out there, but in the grid resiliency innovation partnerships, I don't know if this would have met I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if this might have fit under topic one, but none of that was known back then, right? We didn't know that, the fact that DOE came out with this money, or that, the Biden administration and then through DOE came out with all this money, was something that was not known at that time, right? So in retrospect, potentially it might have fit under topic one, but I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure it really would, mostly because they were talking about grid resilience and transmission capability were really the driver behind that, the ability to increase transfer capability between regions. And so I could certainly go back and look at that for you. But the point is, no one knew back then.
Yeah.
So, we didn't know there was going to be a pandemic either, but there was. We made a lot of decisions that we wouldn't otherwise have made, probably, had we known we were going to have a pandemic.
Good questions. Anyone else? I'm still developing some, but it's a lot of information.
For money things. for
Money
other
things.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming everyone up here kind of understands the whole concept of electricity, right? What voltage, current, and resistance, and how they're related and stuff. That's a question, kind of, maybe, but yeah. Some of the things I don't understand, just simple things like, what is a reconductor transmission circuit again?
That's putting new wire up.
That's what that means?
So increasing the size, they're conductors,
Right.
and you're replacing the conductors.
Okay,
Yeah, so. that's
so it's just
reconductor.
replacing the conductors on a transmission line?
Yep,
Thank you.
sorry,
Okay, that just didn't work for me. But this is all, we went out on a limb bonding, and we went out, we've been doing what we should have been doing all along. I mean, a lot of this too. And so the upgrading and the continuing, I know we remain optimistic on the big grant for the shore power. We stand a pretty good chance according to what we've been told. So that's good news. And I agree, bonding would be down the list of preferable things. Somebody give us the money, that'd be great, Or
We
a
have
huge
been,
portion of it.
the rail belt for the last 3 or 4 years, we've spent a lot of time back in DC, and they know who we are at DOE and EPA. We've met with many of those folks, the NRUS, the administrators, the deputy secretaries. So I think the projects that are coming out of Alaska right now, they brought up the project for the heat pumps, which Seward is working on. That was brought up to me by a DOE individual at a meeting I had last week. So I do think we have as good a chance as anyone else. They know who we are. We've been in their offices for 3 or 4 years, every year saying, hey, this is the rail belt, we need help. So I think we were complimented in a couple of the meetings I was in last week. I was there primarily on the Grid Resiliency Innovation Partnership side of it, but we met with the EERE folks, which handle the community, C2C, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's their community efforts, which included the heat pump folks. But the fact that we came together and we went there as one, and we've been back and we've told them we have a story, and I think we've got a lot of good, we've got awareness there, so I think that helps with all of these type of things.
Any questions council can come up with? We do have some public here, and it is a work session, so if it's okay with you guys, if I ask if any of the public have
Absolutely.
questions? Mr. Public, yes.
I can talk from here.
Okay, sure, we can, you're loud.
Couple things. Simplest thing is if you could
Oh,
explain.
you should say who you are.
Oh, Bruce
though,
Shop,
just for-
outside
yeah,
city limits.
Just for the.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Mayor. First thing would be just a clarification on the underbuild along Nash Road. How is that different than the main transmission to Spring Creek? Are there separate conductors on the poles for the underbuild?
Separate crossovers.
And is that all coming from Fort Raymond, or is there another substation?
That comes from Fort Raymond.
Then the other thing is on, two questions on the lawn. Is there enough land there for the equipment to be built? Particularly in today's climate, because I know out there we run into Chrisman with the borough, which is management along the waterfront, and you're right along the river. So has that been well thought out, that there is enough land to make this thing happen?
Yeah, I believe there is. We're going to remove the transformer, which is a pretty significant piece of real estate. There's not going to be the transformer there anymore. The big transformer is going to move into Spring Creek. The little one, the 2.5 MVA that feeds Primrose and Cooper Lane will still be there. But the larger one, which is the 69-115 transformer, is going to be taken out and moved to Spring Creek. So that frees up a fair amount of.
You can do that in a single outage?
Well, we're going to backfeed on that underbuilt out of Fort Raymond. Yeah, there will be an outage, but we'll be backfeeding SMIC through the underbuilt out of Fort Raymond to make that happen. That's one of the little, this is sort of like a little puzzle. You got to have this in place, and then you can do that, and then you can do this, and then you can do that. So, yeah.
And the second, you're going to put a battery and a small control station out there, I think is what you said in line, so that you can open the switch. Can you also close the switch remotely?
Yes, what I don't know is, I believe it's a low break switch, but I need to verify that. I don't know if it is
That's in the budget.
that switch has already been procured. It just hasn't been installed. It isn't here yet, but it has been procured.
Well, those are the big things I had on infrastructure, and I think your work session is primarily infrastructure.
Primarily, yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask Brian while he's here, if he's had a chance to look at the city grid itself and seeing if there's anything major that you see that's going to need to be implemented or improved.
I have not had a chance to do that. I'm trying to kind of
We're
pick
working
up
it.
pieces and be one thing at a time here.
That you've got all the locations and the buzzwords for all that's impressive. So,
I got that one, but we're just doing it one thing at a time.
I guess I got one more.
Okay.
I'm a little confused. When you say there's a $20 million budget and a certain amount of money that's been dedicated, but that 20 million is actually including almost $1.5 million for the shore power.
It did, yes.
So if you were to subtract that at this point, the shortfall is actually 18.5.
Correct.
Well, not the shortfall, the budgeted amount.
From an estimate, yeah, from an estimate perspective, it has 1.4.
Not quite as bad.
So, yeah.
If we get the grant. Right. You had a question for.
Yeah, I had a question. If you guys have had a chance to talk to Chigach about the maintenance from, is it Lawing over to Dave's Creek? Have you guys reconciled that or figured that out, or are we gonna be on the lam for paying that every year? I mean,
The trees. You're
the
talking about
tree clearance on that section.
I think that will be and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think that would certainly be a discussion in the negotiation of power sales agreement, power purchase agreement.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else out there in the public having any questions or comments? I see another member there. Okay.
I'd
Council?
like to add one thing.
Yeah, sure.
Based on Councilmember Barnwell's comment, if you want to see what the clearing was about, you come see some of the property that I own in the north end, which I actually bought from the city of Seward when the city of Seward acquired the right-of-way. There was a number of lots out there that had to be purchased so that they could establish a proper right-of-way, and then they sold those to individuals under auction with the established right-of-way. It's mind-blowing what they did. I know it's expensive, but
In case people, I'm very aware of that. I have a friend that lives out there, but just describe what it's like along the transmission line? I mean, because maybe they haven't seen.
It's amazing. And it should not need to be done again very quickly.
You can see a lot of it from the highway.
Yeah, if you look, yeah, if people look, it's
Yeah.
wide and a
It's pretty
lot and
significant.
opens, you know. But preventing fires, I guess, is the whole point, but that seems.
Fires and down trees.
Down trees. I mean,
Yep.
both. But yeah, that's a thing. Well, it might not have to do it again for quite some time now.
Yeah, you know, in my experience, clear, you know, I'm an engineer, I love all the blue boxes and all the cool computer stuff, but the best money you can spend is clearing the trees.
To keep
You get the trees down, you don't need the blue boxes. You know, they don't ever have to work, so that's definitely where you put your money, that's the place to put your money.
I just know it's kind of a shock to property owners when they suddenly wake up one morning or come back from a small vacation and find out that you can see your neighbor right out your bedroom window now, and you didn't even know there was a house there hardly, yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, Councilmember Borman.
I'm sorry, it's great to have you here, thanks for coming. The other one just popped in my head is, have you guys had a discussion about, it's a tough time to talk about it because of the price hikes we just had, but having Seward Electric have some incentive programs to try to get heat pumps, private heat pumps in residential houses, solar arrays, some way to kick in or help with some of the alternative energy options that are out there these days.
We haven't, you know, I haven't had a chance to do
Yeah.
anything with respect to that. I would say that, you know, I'm looking at, the DOE has grant funds to help with those kinds of things. So I'm going to look into that. You know, they have a lot of programs right now around that. So I am going to look into it, but I haven't had a chance to yet. You know, it's possible that we could get the DOE both to give us some technical assistance and maybe help us with a, you know, when you do something like that, I think you really need sort of an overall study that sort of gives you some direction, you know, some directional advice. You know, you ought to be moving in this direction, and here's sort of time frames and things like that, before you actually start going down rabbit trails and end up in a place you don't want to be and you didn't know you shouldn't be there. So, but I know DOE has money for that. I haven't run around how you get it and whether Seward's would qualify for it and whether the deadlines are. But anyway, it's on my list of stuff to do.
Other questions? We have time. Did you have anything else to?
No, I'm whatever you all
Okay.
need, I'm here until you don't.
Mr. Bickling, did you have anything to add?
No, but we do appreciate having Brian on staff with us and working for us, and it's just his technical expertise. And that's not to throw anyone that came before him under the bus, but I do think he's by far the most broad background technical person that the city's ever had in that type of position, and so we do really appreciate that, having that technical side and just the wealth of state relationships that you have. And so I think, I mean, we're very thankful, and I think we're going to benefit greatly. We already are benefiting greatly, and we will continue to do so with him in that position. So we're definitely appreciative.
Thank you guys. It's an interesting project. I mean, I'm sort of here at the end of my career, but it's kind of interesting there's a lot of, the breadth of it is huge, you know, from.
Yeah.
By necessity.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for the? Okay. Then I will adjourn this work session at 6:19 and mention that we'll be back at 7 with our regular meeting. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.